WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Mubaraka Ibrahim, and this is Mornings with Mubaraka, where we talk about national issues from a local level through a lens of diversity. I want to welcome you to the show. We are broadcasting live from downtown New Haven, Connecticut. We are streaming live on TuneIn Radio and newhavenindependent.org. We are also on Facebook. So we are streaming live on the New Haven Independent Facebook page as well as the Fit Muslimah Facebook page. You can find us there, New Haven Independent or Fit Muslimah, where you're going to find lots of information. And every Wednesday morning, you are going to find me at 10 a.m. Music, Harry. Music. No problem. Good morning. So we are doing a chat back episode today, and in our chat back episode, I want you to call me and sound off on some of the things that we're going to talk about. So if you are just tuning in to the show and you have not tuned in prior, then you need to know that chat back episodes is just me chatting with you. Okay, it's me chatting with you. We're talking about current issues. We're talking about all the things that's happening in the world. And today we're not going to talk about a whole bunch of serious stuff. We're just going to chat about the stuff that's going around. Here's the good news. The best news is that you can actually call me. You can give me a call. Call me on my cell phone. Okay, you can call me. You can absolutely call me and give me your opinions on some of the things that we are going to talk about. So one of the things that we are talking about this morning is we're going to talk about a couple of things. So I'll give you a preview. We are going to talk about Meghan Markle. We're going to talk about Prince Harry. We are going to talk about have you seen this video or this news story about the 30-year-old who his mom had to take him to court to get him to move out of her house? So that's interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit. But let's talk about one of my favorite things that I have been talking about with my family all week is the wedding, the beautiful royal wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, or should I say now Duchess Meghan Markle. So it was a beautiful wedding. It really was. I don't know if you've seen the wedding, but if you haven't, you need to go and watch it on replay because it was a really, really beautiful wedding. I think that you will, if you are like me and you absolutely love, I guess. I'm sort of kind of a romantic. So I actually really like weddings. Like you put a wedding in front of me on a video or on Facebook and I am totally in watching it. I love those like romantic proposals kind of thing, all those kind of things, so I've been kind of like following them since, okay, let me give you a little background on my knowledge of them. It kind of started when he got engaged to Meghan Markle. I'm going to be totally honest. I don't watch Suits. I've literally never seen an episode of Suits. She's apparently an actress in Suits. But it came to my attention when they announced their engagement and everybody started making like these really funny memes about Prince Harry, like, getting with his blackness now that he's engaged to somebody black. And I kind of like followed along with it and have read a little bit more about the monarchy and the things that they do. So really interesting. And it has been some really interesting conversations that's been happening around. So first, let's talk about the wedding. So, it's British monarchy. And so everything has a protocol, right? In the last 20 years or so, they have broken a lot of protocol. And this wedding is no exception. So some of the things that I know that they've changed, right? I realized that I didn't realize until I clicked on and read the comments to the picture of the wedding, their like official photo, that people really hate Camille. Like, I didn't realize people hated her so much. But I knew that they loved Diana. So that kind of makes sense. But one of the protocols that they actually have changed is that obviously you can now marry non-royals, right? So before Prince Charles couldn't marry Camille, so now he's married to her. Another protocol that I know that they have changed traditionally is they have removed. There was a rule that like if that the crown goes to boys in order, and if you have a girl like Princess Charlotte and she has now a little brother, the little brother would actually get the crown before her. They've actually removed that, so the Princess Charlotte actually will stay in line in order to get the crown, which is really, really interesting, right? So there's never been a rule against marrying black people. There's just, they just haven't. But the interesting thing, so Meghan Markle is half black. Her mother is black. Her father is white. There's been a lot of conversation going on about, is she black enough? Will she be able to make a difference? And I would like to hear your comment on this before I give you my 2 cents. I really want to hear what you have to say about does Meghan Markle's blackness even matter? That is the question. I think that it would be really, really interesting to hear what you have to say about that. So in the terms of the wedding, some of the things that they did that really stood out to people was she, being Meghan Markle, sort of displayed her blackness by having Britain's first black cellist. Apparently this year, a black cellist, a young man, he actually won some national competition. Obviously, we're in America, so we're not really up on that. I had to Google him once I saw him up there. So he is like the first person to what do you call it? He's the first black person to win this award, and they actually had him play. There was an all black choir. That was another kind of display of the African American side of her. They had a really moving black pastor who gave a very touching sermon on love and the need for love. And so all of that, and he did it in a very kind of like traditional Southern Baptist black pastor manner kind of thing. Now, I grew up Muslims. I was born and raised Muslim, so I'm not very familiar with the Baptist church, but I've seen the videos. I've totally seen the videos. So that being said, he was very traditionally kind of like black Baptist pastor kind of dude. And I thought that was really interesting. So all of these aspects of people, there were some pre-blogs, I'm going to call them pre-blogs, all the people that made all types of assumptions because they've never kind of like really paid attention to Meghan Markle until this, and from my aspect, they made assumptions based on the fact that she's very light. Now, I have to give you that. She is extremely light. When I heard that he was marrying somebody who was black, I had to look twice to make sure I was looking at the right picture because she is very, very light. But I think that she did a really good job of identifying or making clear that although she is very light, that she totally relates to the black half of her identity. So the interesting thing that has been going around is that is Meghan Markle, and there's been so many commentaries on this, is she black enough to be considered black, meaning like her color, right? That's a really interesting question because blackness is experienced differently by different people of the African diaspora. If you have a comment on this, you can give me a call at 203-872-7356 or 203-684-8907. So give me a call and let me know, what do you think? So Here is my kind of like 2 cents about the Meghan Markle thing. I think that it's really interesting that she very clearly, because she's helping plan the wedding, right? The royal family they really are about protocol. They are extremely aware that they are being watched by the world, that they're being watched by people in their country, and that they are really setting a tone and making a statement in everything that they do. I mean, this is a family where they have rules on how often you can pan the camera to the queen. You can't physically touch the queen. You can, they have a lot of rules. So they very intentionally and purposefully included these things inside of the wedding. With so much thought going into it, I think that it's really interesting that people still question her blackness. Now, the other thing is about her just simply being black. Now, when you look at her, at first you might, from a distance, say, I wonder if she has some black in her. But you can certainly tell that she has black in her. But what does it mean to be black? Black is not just that you somehow come from the diaspora of being African American. It really is about your experience in the world. So I think that really, if we think about it that way, it really changes kind of like this question. When people say she's black enough, just because you're light skin doesn't mean that you don't experience blackness in your everyday interaction and being in the world. It's a very different experience for somebody who is darker, like me, right? And it may be even a even more different experience for somebody who is darker than me, right? So these are all different types of experience, but one does not negate the other. So Abdurrahman, assalamu alaikum, on Facebook says, black enough? Is that what it is? Why not we say she is white enough? She is a mix and she is what she is. No judgment. She is what made her husband fall in love with her and not because she is half black. I really agree with that I don't think that he fell in love with her because she was half black or half white. I think that is a really good comment. I think that part of the reason why people are saying that is she black enough is sort of kind of like the conversation that happened around President Barack Obama, right? People started saying, well, he is half white. That was also a conversation. I think part of it is because black people have been kept out of the rings of power for so long that when someone, even if they are half black, get into the circle, it is, for a lot of people, it's considered change. It's considered a step in the right direction. So I think the reason why we don't say, is she white enough, is because the British family is already white. And so her being white wouldn't make a big difference. Sort of kind of like when his brother got married, he married somebody white. People were like, oh, the big thing was, wow, she's American, right? So they try to find something that's a little bit different than the circle that she's entering. And so that would be my comment to that. Like, whether or not she's black enough or white enough, we say black enough because I think that it's a part. I think the question around was she black enough surrounded the idea that many black people, I should say some black people, because black people, I think, has been harder than any other people. They've been real hard on her. Some black people really looked at it as an achievement. I mean, me personally, it is what it is. I mean, I don't think I'd necessarily look at it as some type of achievement. I think that it's interesting. I think that it is, will it cure British rule and racism and white supremacy throughout the world? Because Meghan Markle, in her halfness, have entered into the British family. No, probably not. However, I think that it's a really interesting. I think that it's really interesting, and it is certainly worth conversation and talk about. To talk about, will this make an impact? So, if you are just tuning in, you are tuning in to a chat back episode of Mornings with Mubaraka, where we're talking about current issues, things that's trending. And if you have a comment, you can give me a call at 203-872-7356 or 203-684-8907. You can call into either of those numbers and tell me if you think that Meghan Markle's blackness will make a difference in the British family. I think that's an interesting topic to explore. Will there be any type of difference? So I'm going to be devil's advocate, right? And I'm going to say, does being in the room or having the ear of people who making decision, whether or not you are that decision maker or not, does that impact anything? Does that make a difference? And if you say that it does not, I would say, if you are American, do you think that it makes a difference when someone tweeted Paul Ryan's entire intern staff and there was literally no person of color among his some 50 something interns? Does it really make a difference? So if it doesn't make a difference for Meghan Markle, why would it make a difference for Paul Ryan or for the recent photo that was tweeted of Melania's military families luncheon, where there were dozens of military wives and not one military wife of color? So does it make a difference if you have a seat at the table? I always think of these questions where people really go off on a tangent for almost no reason, in my view. When we make exceptions, right? Make exceptions to the rule. It's not going to make a difference for this person, but it does make a difference here. Like, if it makes a difference, then it should cross over. There should be intersection of that difference. So that would be my question to most people is, why would it make a difference? And if it doesn't, what is the reason why it's not going to make that difference? So that has been a really interesting kind of like, what do you call it? Talkback point, which is interesting. So I want to read a comment from Hakika on my page that says, she says, I think we should give Meghan a chance to be happy in her marriage, allowing her to walk in her purpose. She's not a messiah. She's a human being. Of course, she's black enough. That is absurd for black people to even make such a ridiculous statement. We must grow up and walk in our purpose as individuals. We waste too much time worrying about others. Again, another really good point. So it's interesting to see people have different views on whether or not this really has made a difference, if it should be significant for African American families, African American and black people throughout. I mean, I guess black people in Britain are probably happy too. That would be interesting. I should talk to somebody in Britain, a black person in Britain, and see what their take is. Because black people in America, y'all been hard. Y'all been hard on her, like really hard on her. Saying it doesn't make a difference. So if you're just tuning in, you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven's home for community radio. Broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We are streaming live on TuneIn Radio and newhavenindependent.org, as well as our Facebook pages on New Haven Independent and Fit Muslima. You can join the conversation. Today we are having a chat back live show Morning with Mubaraka, and you can give me a call at 203-872-7356 or 203-684-8907. So here is something really interesting that I came across on my timeline, and I thought it was interesting, and I also thought it was quite funny. So there is a 30-year-old who has gone to court, and he is, his parents took him to court to get him to move out of their house. Haha. This to me is extremely hilarious. Partly because I have 4 kids. Now, I have been fortunate where half of my kids so far have moved out extremely early because I have always had a rule in my house is that when you are old enough, so in America, 18 is the legal age, and you no longer want to obey me, then it is time for you to have your own home, your own realm, your own dominion. I'm not kicking you out. I'm just saying that living in my house means following my rules. That means that you will contribute to the house and do chores. That means that you will adhere to our chosen lifestyle, which is Islam. That means that you will be an obedient child, even if you are 25 or 30 or 22. So that has always been my rule. And it's been really interesting. So people have been saying like, oh, this is so crazy that he's 30 now. It's unusual in America, but it is not unusual in other countries. So I'm going to say something that's going to maybe a little bit controversial. And this is from my personal observation. I think that it is unusual in America because young people are not as obedient. And I'm seriously like, this has been my observation. And I have always said this to my kids. Like, when I have interaction with my East Indian friends, and this may change based on generation because America has a really different concept of individualism. And so, which is different than if you grew up in India or if you grew up in China, right? They have a really communal society. Now, America has a very individualistic society. So when kids grow up, they kind of like want to be what I call pseudo adults. They work or may not work. They go to school and they think that what I do is my business, not taking in consideration that everything that you do is going to affect your parents. It's going to affect your family. It's going to affect your community, whether or not you do it intentionally or not, right? So if you know that you make an achievement and your parents are going to be proud of you, what you do affects your parents significantly, right? So that's a huge feeling of accomplishment, and I'm proud that my kid is able to do that. Well, when you do something that's not good, that's still going to affect your parents in the same way. So the whole idea of individualism is really blown out of proportion. Yes, we are responsible for our own actions, but it also affects everyone around us. So it's really important that young people seem not to do that. What I have always told my children is that as long as you are going to contribute to the functioning of the house, meaning not necessarily bills, right? So sometimes they may not have a job or whatever. I have a 22-year-old that lives with me, and no problem with him living with me because, he abides by the rules. So when you have a kid that is like, which this kid was, I'm not doing chores because, and they stop feeding me. Well, if you're not going to wash no dishes, I am going to stop feeding you. I'm just saying, like, why would you think that you deserve food when you won't contribute to anything happening in the house? Every water that's used to cook food, to clean the dishes, that's a part of the running of the house. It's a part of, you're in a room using electricity. That's a part of running in a house. You have your internet. That uses my internet service and my electricity. That's a part of running in a house. You're in the house, just walking around, you create a footstep. Dust in the house is created from dead skin cells of people who are inside of that environment. So as long as you are in the environment, then you are contributing to the dirt and the buildup that's happening in the house. So you should contribute to the chores because that is the way a family machine runs. I'm very, very particular about that. I know there's again, I'm going on my social media feed. There's a lot of um, uh, I see a lot of comments on things like somebody posted the other day. It was black people stop kicking your kids out at 18, right? And that it's too young, and we need to make sure they're financially stable before we send them out into the world, and we should help them as long as we possibly can. Now, that has some merit, but I would also say look at it on the other side. Black kids realize that it is a mercy from your parents that you are allowed to stay in the house, and you should act accordingly. So it's really hard for you to tell a parent who a kid is not listening, coming in and out of your house all times of night, that doesn't respect you, and you're saying don't kick them out, or they need to stay because they're not financially stable. It's more than just finances that gives you the right or the ability to be able to stay home in your parents' house. I was going to mention something that I think I got off track earlier. So this is just my own personal observation. And again, people who are Pakistani, Indian, Chinese, they may totally disagree with me, but this is just my observation from watching other families that I have had contact with. Older kids living home from those particular backgrounds that I have observed are just more obedient to their parents, which makes it easier for them to stay home. American kids, and black and white, in my observation, they become a little bit kind of like, I'm a legal adult, right? I always tell my kids, even ones that moved out, as long as we are helping you pay bills, you are not an adult. Okay? Your independence and able to take full financial, social, emotional responsibility for your actions, that's everything, is what qualifies you as an adult. Not turning 18, even, okay, I'm 18, I moved out and I have my own, and I can pay my own rent, but I am emotionally needy. And I'm not saying like not emotionally dependent or need a love from your parents, but you know what I mean. Like, some people go overboard. I can't make one decision by myself. I need to call my parents for every single thing. Should I wear this or should I wear that? That kind of stuff. And that it really does make a difference. It makes a difference to the parents, and it makes a difference to the young person who is trying to figure out what they call now adulting, right? So adulting, you just kind of figure it out on your own. Now they're writing books about it, but you really do kind of like figure that out as you go along, because every decision you make is going to domino the next decisions that you have to make, right? So this 30-year-old, which is really interesting, he claims that he's a businessman. So in other words, he doesn't have a real job, because if his business was doing really well, then he should be able to afford to get out on his own, which according to him, he can't. He asked the judge to give him 6 months, right? He's not paying rent. His mother and father said that it's time. He's 30 and he's not paying rent. You need to be independent. Yeah, that would be the fact that he's 30 and he has a kid of his own, right? But here is the interesting thing, is that the judge gave him 2 weeks. He says that he needs 6 months. So he's going to appeal it. His poor parents. So they're going to have to actually go back to court with him. They're going to have to go back to court because he is going to appeal. He's going to appeal the decision. He really wants to stay in his parents' house that bad. But so here's the interesting thing that I would be interested to chat about. And you can put a comment inside of the Facebook chats, and I'll read it. The interesting thing is, does his parents feel that they have any type of responsibility to him turning out this way? Like, where along the line of lessons did he miss, or did they fail to talk about independence? to talk about responsibility, to talk about civic responsibility, civic independence is also a thing. Like, at what point did the conversation was not had? That would be an interesting follow up to this. So we'll see what happens when they go to court later on this month. So the article says that it's going to be about 7 weeks before his 31st birthday. So he's going to have to stay a little bit longer in order for him to go to court. Because here's the other interesting thing. Well, at least here in Connecticut, and every state differs, so you have to check your own state. The interesting thing is that in the state of Connecticut, once somebody stays with you for 2 weeks, 14 consecutive days, they are considered a resident. And if you would like them to leave after that point, you actually have to get a legal eviction, which could take months. So I wonder if that is kind of like the biggest reason why they had to take him to court, because they can't just evict him. They can't just like lock him out or kick him out. You actually have to evict him. So that's always good to know when you like agree for relatives to come stay with you. Like if a relative comes spend the summer with you for like 3 weeks, then and they decide they don't want to leave, they actually don't have to according to the law. Very interesting. Very interesting. Obviously, I don't have a lot of relatives to stay with me. I don't have a lot of relatives to stay with me. So we are having a chat back episode here on Mubaraka, and I'm just talking about all of the interesting things in the news. You can give me a call at 203-872-7356 or 203-684-8907. You can give me a call in and tell me what you think about any of the topics that we talked about. So here's what I want to talk about next. The President Obama and Michelle Obama's Netflix deal. I have been online reading about the Netflix deal. And I have actually been, so a couple of months ago, maybe about 3 months ago, I decided to diversify my timeline, which means I now follow some Republican and some conservative Facebook pages and people, right? So I am not Republican. I am not conservative. But I think one of the problems that we have had in this last election cycle is that we have both Republicans and conservative been in our own individual bubbles. So all we see is a Democratic perspective of everything. And then if you are Republican or conservative, Facebook is going to show you the pages that you like. They're going to show you the things that interest you. So all you're seeing is a Republican or conservative perspective of everything. I think that what happened that works against us is that we really don't see the other side, and no one is 100% wrong or 100% right. It's really interesting. I'm the type of person that I actually like hearing people with opposing political views, world views. I think that it's interesting that even if I don't agree with them, I want to know why you think the way that you think. Like, because it's also going to help me not be offended when you say something like crazy. So here's one friend was telling me something that was really, I thought was racist that another friend what had said. And so my first question was he drunk? Like, give me a reason. I want to know why he would even say something like that. And so when I found out that he was a little tipsy, I was like, okay, at least I know like the context behind why he would say something like that. Whether or not he meant it, and that's a whole nother story. But the context was that he was inebriated. So I actually want to know that kind of stuff. When you talk to somebody about, sexism or sexual abuse, a person who has been sexually abused will have a much more visceral reaction than somebody who has not. And to understand that is important if you are going to have a reasonable conversation with that person. You have to understand the emotions behind what they're saying. You have to understand the context. Not you have to know all their business, but having that, knowing that has happened in their past history really will change the way that you communicate with the person. So, in all of that light, I have been diversifying the my timeline. And it's really interesting. So, the Democratic, liberal, pro Obama people are like, this is great. They're going to contribute to Netflix. They're going to make movies. We're going to get great context. And the conservative and Republican aspect is like, this is a part of a plot of changing the way Americans think and pushing their liberal agenda. Like, I watched this one video and the dude is like, he is like, because they're going to create a version of queens, and then halfway through the movie the queen is going to say, well, I wasn't always a queen, I used to be a man, and that's a part of their pushing their transsexual agenda. I was like, what? Where you get that from? It was like crazy. So at least when I have a conversation, if I ever have a conversation with a conservative about Netflix, at least I know where they're coming from, right? Because they believe it is a conspiracy that now the Netflix and the Obamas have combined together in order to use digital media to brainwash the American people into a liberal agenda. That is definitely their point of reference. So, hey, who knows? I think that my thing is like, wait and see. Let's see what kind of content that they produce. I mean, I like the Obamas. I'm excited to see what they produce, but I am not above criticizing. Like, if the stuff turns out crazy and they really do push a particular agenda, I have no problem speaking up and saying, I'm fishy about this. But on the other hand, if it is something that is really good, I think that they should get credit for it. So it's going to be really interesting to watch as this progresses. And I'm going to still continue to follow my conservative pages and my GOP pages, along with things like the progressive Democrats and the Young Turks, and seeing both points of view of everything so that I can make an informed decision. But what's really interesting about this process is it makes me do research to get information about the actual topic, right? So this is a total side note, and we're just chatting, so I do stuff like this. So I actually was reading an article the other day, and when I read articles about controversial topics, I often will read many of the comments, because the comments will send me on a Google search. And so this may be old news, but it came up because now I also, on my timeline, I will admit, I actually follow Fox News on my timeline, because again, I'm trying to diversify my timeline. And the lady on one of the commentators on Fox News, she was saying that she said that we need to take the billions of dollars that we give to Planned Parenthood every year and use it for security in schools. And that's the solution to the school shootings, that we need to use it for security in schools. And so when I got to the comments, people was like, you guys, can you be so ignorant? Like, the government does not there's no line item in the government to give Planned Parenthood. It's not funded by the government. The government doesn't and Planned Parenthood is not. And then other people was like, oh, Planned Parenthood is just, all they're doing is killing babies over there. And so it was really interesting, like, back and forth in these comments. And so I decided to, let me look this up, because I actually was not really knowledgeable about that. Like, how does the government, or can the government, defund Planned Parenthood? So comes to find out that the government actually does not fund Planned Parenthood. So the government cannot defund Planned Parenthood. The way that the government gives money to Planned Parenthood is Planned Parenthood which is a healthcare system. It is not just an abortion clinic. There are some Planned Parenthood clinics that do perform abortions, but that is a very small part of their services. They do preventive care, birth control, pap smears, cancer screenings, lots of services, mostly for women, but they also see men. But like 70% of their patients are people who are on Medicare and Title X, I believe it's called. Both of those are government insurance. So when somebody with a government plan goes to Planned Parenthood performs a service for them and bills the government, and the government actually pays them for that service. So that's not really funding Planned Parenthood. So when you say defunding Planned Parenthood, the only way the government can do that is that if they say you can go to any doctor except for Planned Parenthood. Like, that would be the only, which would be a travesty, because in some locations, even rural locations, a Planned Parenthood clinic may be the only healthcare provider for miles and miles of that particular person. So that would actually be a travesty, and it will make a lot of people suffer in terms of getting proper health care. So I thought that that was really interesting, that people really go on and they develop, even these supposedly expert commentators, and they really go on and on about the idea of defunding Planned Parenthood when the government actually can't defund it, like, because they don't fund it in the first place. So I thought that that was really interesting. So that's one of the benefits of diversifying your timeline. So I'm going to encourage you to diversify your timeline, read the comments, do a Google search, find out the truth about how things are going and who actually has a leg to stand on. Because again, nobody is 100% right or 100% wrong. I'm sure as liberals will find something they can agree with Republicans. Republicans will probably find something they can agree with Democrats. There's going to be some crossover somewhere. Now, the interesting thing is that where are those on your priority list, right? So if we're agreeing about number 15 on my priority list, but vehemently disagree about number 1, then you probably never end up in the same party, but at least you know you got something in common. So diversify your timeline. And keep a watch out for the things that is going to happen on Netflix with President Obama and Michelle Obama. I think that is going to be quite interesting. We are coming towards the end of the show, and I just want to send out a big Connecticut congratulations to Stacey Adams, who received the Democratic nomination in the state of Georgia, the first woman and the first African American. I think tides are changing, guys. Let's see what happens in November. I'm liking what I see. We have Tahira Amatul-Wadud running in Massachusetts, the first African-American Muslim woman to run for a congressional seat in the state in her district of District 1. We got Stacey Adams, who has won the gubernatorial and now the Democratic gubernatorial nomination. We have a lot of good things that are that's happening around the country. So we just have to keep up this momentum for November. Because even though I diversify my timeline, I still lean Democrat. So I do want to see us take back the House in November. And that's all for me today. Thank you for tuning in to our chat back. Next week, we are having a conversation with 2 guests about healthcare and healthcare discrimination. So you want to tune in every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. on Mornings with Mubaraka. Thank you for listening, and go throughout your week to be a voice and not an echo.